welcome to another BOMA Thursday afternoon conversation. Today is a super fun conversation, so we get to talk about the BOMA International Convention, which just ended a few days ago. Everybody here on the screen went except for me, so this call is going to be probably what's better for everybody. Less of me, more of everybody else. So Kelly, why don't we just start with you? Everybody that's watching probably knows you. Introduce yourself, your company, and just maybe tell everybody a little bit about what your experience was at the conference and what you got out of it, and kind of what your favorite parts of it were.
Yeah. So Kelly Schnebley, I'm BOMA Idaho president and a retail broker with Colliers. I think one of the highlights of the conference for me was just how optimistic everyone is. A lot of talk about changes and new processes, new technology, but everybody was really optimistic about the future of commercial real estate and really the benefits of all of those changes.
That's awesome. Any one particular change that pokes out in your mind about something that's maybe really crazy, or something maybe easy that we should have done all along?
I don't know if this falls into either of those categories, but one of the really good seminars that I went to covered ESG investing, so environmental social governance, which one thing they pointed out was just how dramatically interest in that has grown. Where you had like one mention a month on CNBC or whatever a couple of years ago, and now they're talking about it every hour, and how important that's become in building investment, and how that's kind of changed what operations teams need to pay attention to for their buildings.
Sure. Interesting. That's really cool. So for anybody that's watching this that might not know what that is, can you give just a quick overview of what that is?
Yeah, I'm just going in. So on the environmental side, it's, addressing climate change, talking about renewable energy, reducing water use, those kinds of obvious sustainability things. In the social, it's, thinking about their human capital, the supply chain, health and safety standards, community relations, diversity and inclusion efforts. And in governance is kind of the structure that helps the company address those things. And so they get into like board diversity, shareholder rights, all kinds of cool and intricate things I don't usually work in. So it's interesting to learn more about what all of that is, and how important it's becoming, for bigger companies, but I just see that it's going to trickle down.
Yeah. And for me, having been to a number of BOMA international conventions in the past, that's always kind of the coolest thing for me is learning about stuff, kind of like that stuff that I maybe knew about a little bit, but hearing how prominent it is in other markets, and how, we all know that here in little old Boise, Idaho, we tend to be a little bit behind the times. So hearing about some stuff like that, I feel like for us is kind of a competitive advantage, knowing that, in other markets are working on it now. So that'll be something that'll become more of a topic of conversation in, here in Boise in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. So that's kind of, like I said, for me, kind of one of the cool things about going to those is hearing about some of that stuff. Yeah. So Jana, what about you? This is how many BOMA international conventions have you been to over the years? I know you and I have been to 3 or 4 together.
Yeah, probably 10, honestly, over the years, probably 10. Yeah. Which I've been doing this for 20 years, so not enough. I mean, I think you need it every year. I think it recharges your batteries. It just gives you a vision of what BOMA really is on a bigger scale, and how many professionals are plugged in, what the benefits are. Some of my favorite things, I loved Doris Kearns Goodwin, the lady who was our keynote speaker. She spent her life researching presidents, especially the first few presidents. She worked in the White House with Lyndon B. Johnson, and she just, when she was giving her presentation, I thought, oh, she's probably reading this, because it was just so eloquent. And so she talked about her love for the history of our country and the presidents she was working with. And when she studied these men, how she really just, kind of put herself in their lives and learned so much about them. And then they opened it up for Q&A. And when she was answering those questions, she was just as eloquent and just thought on her feet and just was so brilliant. You know, she was just really great. And I thought it was so fitting to have her come and talk about that in the city we were in, you know, in Boston, with so much history and so much of that surrounding us. So, and then I went to, I loved the theme, you know, boom, everything's different. And I loved the theme they were talking about. It says, in today's real estate market, business as usual is no longer an option. I thought, okay. So then people were sharing options. Okay, business as usual is no longer an option. We talked a lot about some of the workshops I went to with other people who do what I do, and talking about how we serve our members and how we need to do, it needs to happen in so many different ways than it did before, with virtual, hybrid, in-person, outdoor, you know, getting creative, events to get people to, you know, get to know each other, onboarding with people when they join. Everything's different. It's no longer just okay to say, hey, just come to a luncheon and you'll figure it out. Because that's what, you know, in our market, it is a small market. We know each other. People have known each other for a long time. So it's okay to show up to a meeting where, if you've never been involved in the BOMA organization before, you could show up to a meeting and you'd probably see people you know. Right?
At least people you recognize. Yeah. To walk in there and not know anybody, recognize anybody would be crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere you go. So just sort of gathering ideas from other markets and what they're doing to streamline that process and how we can do better here. I also loved the diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar that I went to. It really opened my eyes to the fact that they said, if you are not actively pursuing a mission in diversity, equity, and inclusion, you are unintentionally excluding. And so I thought, are we unintentionally excluding because we don't have a committee here in Boise yet? We don't have one in Idaho. And it's something that has to be on our radar. Just like Kelly said, something that, you know, may not have been talked about on such a prominent level before. It's front and center, and we need to be part of that. So just things that we can do better, things that we are doing well. You know, other people asking us about our social media is always kind of a fun thing to have people come and ask us about, like, how are you doing your website? How are you doing your social media? You guys are doing a great job. So Christian, you know, kudos to you for what you've put together for us. And
well, thanks. And that's kind of the funny thing when I hear that. I'm like, God, I half-assed that. Like, we could do it so much better. You know, it could be so much better.
Well, you've taught us. So, you know, now we're all trying to participate in posting and sharing about stuff like that. So for me, it was just a chance to get together with about 75 of people who do what I do across the country, 5 of whom retired this session, which is a lot.
Yeah.
People I've seen there for the last, 10 conferences that I've been to or whatever, and just watched how they run their locals and trying to do what they do. And now new people are coming in to take over. So it's just, it was always a recharge. Boston was beautiful. I fell in love with it. Anita and I walked 35,000 miles. We walked a lot.
Nice.
And just appreciated the surroundings. The convention center was beautiful. All of it.
Yeah. All in all, how do you feel like this one compared to other ones you'd been to?
Well, it was so different, right? You can't really compare just because there were so many protocols even for us to be able to go.
Sure.
They had a third party who gathered all the vaccination documents or your negative COVID test. We had to wear masks in the facility. You had to walk through, security, make sure you had your mask, you didn't have a temperature, that kind of thing. So, but they really streamlined it, right, you guys? It was very easy to get there. It was very easy to do. And I just thought we were also excited to be there in person after missing that. I feel like there was a little more of that optimism, like Kelly talked about, just a little more excitement, I think, than just going to another convention, because we know what we missed and we wanted that back.
Nice. So I'm just going clockwise. So Sean, man, it was your first time going to one of these.
Salt Lake. Yeah.
Well, that's Salt Lake, man. That doesn't count though. That's too close.
That's basically a local.
It might as well have been here. Yeah. So what do you think, man? What do you learn?
Yeah. No, BOMA, symposium for Boston was huge. The layout was similar as any, convention center is. You got a lot of vendors and lots of people showcasing all sorts of cool and emerging technology. I learned quite a bit. So I went to about 4 or 5 presentations. 3 of them really stood out in my mind. So the first one I went to was actually one regarding supply chain, and from any contractor perspective, supply chain is huge. And Edie and I are both like, well, we really need to understand what's going on the manufacturer side of this. And the first thing they said is, we're not going to tell you about the manufacturing processes. But it was very interesting because they talked about, it was a lot of toilet paper and cleaning supplies. So it was Georgia Pacific and Waxy and Transwestern. And they were talking about how they, there's this huge bullwhip effect. A bunch of people stop ordering, then they over order, and how do they control that? And the biggest thing that I got from that was look at your 2019 figures and try to project on a manufacturing standpoint. That's what they were doing. And they talked about some of the supply challenges that we're having, how they're looking for automated trucks in the future because they can't get truck drivers. So there's a lot of technology that they were going to do. And then a lot of it was, how do we stop the panic buying? How do we stop people from bulk ordering toilet paper and hand sanitizer? Because now we have a client with 30,000 boxes of it in their unused office building. And that could have went to people that actually have usage, right? Fenway Park was cool. BOMA did tours there. We did that. It was awesome to see the rooftop garden and just the history and how that thing has expanded over 100 years. There's a lot of history in Boston. Very cool walking around the city. We were in the new part of town, so they showed photos of it that were 10 years old, and it was just parking lots. And then you just see all this massive mixed-use retail and office and all these high rises for residential. So they're trying to really create a nice mix in that downtown or I guess South Bay area that we were at, which was awesome to see that development. And I went to a couple, there was a Boeing presentation on how they renovated a old steel mill that was over 100 years old. And that project ended up saving a lot of money. I think they thought they saved over $200 million by renovating this factory versus putting in a new one. And so they talked about all the challenges there. Very, very interesting. You got to see, from an architectural perspective, and they had a general contractor that was talking about some of the challenges there, putting that facility together. So there were some really, really interesting presentations. I learned a lot. Whether half of it will be applicable to my job, we'll find out. But it does help me from a vendor perspective to understand what property managers and facility managers and how we come together to make these buildings happen and grow, and how we manage them.
Sure. Well, yeah, and like I said before, that's kind of the beauty of it is and even with what we do, like every single brown bag lunch and all the stuff that we've done that I've been to isn't necessarily applicable to my job and what I do, but having a better understanding of the industry and what other people do, and kind of, because we're all sort of in this thing together at the end of the day, like, and having just that more global understanding is so important. And I feel like a lot of industries get so pigeonholed in, we're just working on my one thing. And, it's easy to not look outside of that, but having that, more global knowledge is super important. So Anita, how was the trip for you?
So, just full disclosure here, the dog's decided to eat his dinner in the middle of all this, so that's distracted in the background. Thank you, COVID.
That's what happened.
But This was my first event with BOMA, and I'm a relatively new member in comparison to a lot of other people, and that says a lot for BOMA. Once you join BOMA, you're in it for 10, 20, 30 years. So many people we've seen retire or get awards, this last week over in Boston. And for that spoke volumes to me as, a newbie. And also I look at it with a different lens. I look at it with the lens of being a general contractor, where Sean, is looking at it a different way, and Kelly and Jenna elsewhere as well. But several of my big takeaways is just understanding now so much better why we need BOMA. It's for protecting us for the future, it's advocacy, it's knowing what other chapters do. Again, Boise's a little smaller, so we can learn from those other cities where other people are talking about buildings that have several million square feet, and we've got a 300,000 square footer, but
exactly.
it's all the same. So I spend a lot of time on the floor, seeing what new innovative techniques are coming up. I heard, like Kelly just talked about, ESG, that was brought up many times. But what I heard in all of that was carbon neutral, how we're going to spend more time depending on, electricity, not carbon fuels, not gas. Everything's going to get electrified. Can our grid keep up with that? These are all big questions. And then on a more regional level for us, we had a breakfast with the Northwest team, and where our focus going forward as a group of states should be preservation of our water rights, water usage, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's not necessarily an issue in different parts of the country. Keynote speaker was amazing. Talk about electrifying you to go forward. She was wonderful. We could share that video with everyone, we would. I looked, I cannot find it.
We'll keep looking.
We'll keep looking. But, and then, as a general contractor, there's new regulations coming in from ASME about what we need to do for elevators going forward. So we're building these new buildings. Let's set them up for success. Let's put in, even though these codes are not required right now, they're going to be very shortly required here in Idaho. Let's set up our new buildings for success there, so we're not retrofitting, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So it's just going to make me smarter as a builder and smarter as a pre-construction manager. And just in doubling back, I work for ESI. I'm BOMA member, obviously, and I'm the director of pre-construction. So that's where my interests lie.
Awesome. Did you run across, because I know when I've been to those before, there have been some big general contractors that have booths, like in the trade show. Were there any big general contractors from Boston that were there?
There were a couple, but not a lot. Like, it's definitely a niche the general contractors haven't realized yet. So all the big elevator guys were there, for example, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of toilet paper vendors and different things like
Yes.
And then
supplies.
All the bike racks you would ever want to know about.
A lot of material. Hey, it made me laugh. I just have to bring this up, that we had a conversation about escalators one day, and how overwhelming, this, I can't even remember what the conversation was. We were like, let's count the escalators in our city.
There aren't many.
Did you
get to two hands?
Escalator vendors.
You can't find someone to clean your escalator.
Yeah. And so that was the conversation. Yeah. Having someone come to clean your escalators, because there's just not a lot here. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of made me laugh. They're talking in the hundreds of, even thousands of escalators that need to be cleaned, and how many vendors they have that participate in BOMA.
We have like 10.
Yeah. And how we're like, oh, it's hard to find one. So just the differences, it just tells you. There's people there, BOMA New York, all the way, and there's 5 or 6 locals in California. So just, the whole country is there. And it was incredible. And people from all over the world. I saw the local from Hawaii was there as well. So nice. It was just neat to see everybody. It was great to be back with everyone, and to sort of have an opportunity to network and to, learn the things that we did. And I know, Kelly being recognized as the president in that Pacific Northwest breakfast, and just having voting rights within our region, right? And being able to vote on certain things, and where we spend our time and energy, and how we do. And then welcoming a new leadership in our new Pacific Northwest president. Her name's Dawn. She's from Salt Lake City. Nice. And BOMA, Utah, I guess. And so it's just neat to be able to see everybody in one spot. And
the regional breakfasts are always fun when you go kind of around the room and get to hear from everybody. Kelly, did you give the Idaho update?
Not really. Jeff said a few things, because what is he? BOMA fellow.
Yeah. Whatever the chances are, let Jeff do his thing. Let him go. Yeah. Nice. What were there any hot button topics going around the, in the regional breakfast stuff, maybe new stuff, or was it still, homelessness and some of the stuff that we've been talking about, for years?
It was that. There was some talk about homelessness, but the water I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's so much focus, and for good reason, on carbon neutrality and renewable energy and your electricity sources. But water is a huge issue that I think is not getting a lot of attention, at least in the state.
No, definitely not getting talked about enough, for sure.
Yeah, a couple other things. Sorry,
Go. Yeah.
Well, in that particular session as well was just the labor issues we're having here locally and nationally, and how do we fix that? And then the cost of operation going up. So obviously we're at BOMA, so just the operating costs of each building are going up as well. And then different areas are realizing a TI shortage. So there was that as well. Office is looking to be less dense. Obviously, we've seen the writing on the wall there, with amenity space, like true amenities in each building increasing as well. So the usable square footage. Went to another seminar on how to calculate the square footage in BOMA square feet. That was fascinating.
Yeah.
But the
did they get the pencils out and you drew everything and measured it?
No, but there was some graphics up on the screen where someone
Nice.
had pre-done that and figured it all out. But with the BOMA standards changing there, and the big takeaway from that is if your building has not been measured in a long time, or you cannot bind those standards if you're the operator of the building, it's typically your ROI on remeasuring your building is very successful. So just in that.
Yeah, and going to some of the regional conferences, that's one thing that I learned, that within commercial real estate, there's almost a whole industry of folks who will buy a building that hasn't been measured for a while, remeasure it. It's now 20% bigger than it was, and they make money by selling it. It's super. That's something that I'd never considered. But yeah, it's super interesting.
And that was one of my fun conversations with Jeff Wardle when I was there, because we worked on similar, the same projects, and of course, general contracting, I'm looking at gross square feet. The leasing guy or girl is looking at usable and rentable. And then Jeff, with his affiliations with BOMA, is looking at BOMA square feet. And they are not the same.
No, typically not. Yeah. And that brings up a good point, that one of the best reasons to go to the BOMA International Convention is to get some time with Jeff Wardle, because that's really the only time in the last number of years I've been able to spend some captive time with him.
Yep. He's great.
He's the best. He's the best.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just about up against time. You guys have any parting thoughts or anything else you want to share about your experience there?
We love
go next year.
Where is next year?
Nashville.
Yes. Okay.
Plan your budgets now and apply for the BOMA scholarship. We would love to send you to Nashville and love for you to be part of it.
Absolutely.
And I guess if any of us have said anything of a session that we've been part of, reach out to us, ask more questions. We'll be able to look at the slides and share some more data. So it's fascinating stuff. So I was very, very grateful to attend.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you guys got to go. I'm glad you had a great time. Thanks for going and bringing all this information back for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. You guys have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.